Yes.
All right, welcome and thank you for coming. I know some of you are not used to being pulled away from the Capitol for political announcement, or wondering why I'm holding this press conference in Bridgeport. Well, it's not because I was going to be here anyway, looking one last time for that missing bag of 7,000 Foley votes from 2010, or that I'm here registering my 2-year-olds to vote in 2014. And although I'm a forgiving person, it's not forgiveness that brings me here. I'm here because I want to focus attention on the problems of our cities and to talk about how badly the citizens of cities such as Bridgeport are being hurt by Governor Malloy's progressive agenda. As a result of that agenda, Connecticut has acquired an embarrassing and painful list of worsts and lasts. We are dead last in economic growth for 2 years running. We have the worst debt per capita at $49,000. The worst place to retire, according to TopRetirements.com. And we're last in the nation to reach Tax Freedom Day. So Connecticut is getting a raw deal. Higher taxes than anyone else, and ever more spending and borrowing, with little to show for it. The failure of the governor's agenda falls hardest on the residents of cities such as Bridgeport, who already were suffering from high crime rates, too few jobs, the impact of corruption, and underperforming schools. Now Governor Malloy has added to that list of woes large tax increases on middle-income families and policies that are driving the tax base and employers out of our state. Meanwhile, out-of-control spending and things that don't benefit our cities and neglect the very real urban problems of crime, broken school systems, and job flight have left most of our city residents far worse off than when Governor Malloy was elected. While the state spends $300 million to bring jobs to Farmington, for example, a shameful waste of state resources, nothing is being spent bringing jobs to Bridgeport, where the need is much more urgent. Bridgeport's unemployment rate sits at 12%, far higher than the state rate, which recently ticked up to 8.1%, nearly a full percentage point higher than the national rate. Unemployment here among young minorities, I'm told, is over 30%. The fate of our cities will be the fate of our state. Governor Malloy and the legislature are not doing nearly enough. So I will be spending a lot of time in Connecticut cities listening to residents' problems and helping craft solutions. But Connecticut has problems everywhere, not just here. This should not be a surprise. 3 years ago, when Dan Malloy and I were facing off in the governor's race, he said he was going to raise taxes, and boy, he was not kidding. Taxes paid by individuals increased by over $3 billion, or about 20%, in his first budget alone. This was the largest tax increase in Connecticut history, and unfortunately, it's a burden that falls mostly on middle-income families and young people. During the campaign, he dodged questions about reducing spending, and for good reason. He has done little but stand by while spending has increased by about $1 billion a year since he took office. During his campaign, Dan Malloy talked very little about the challenges for businesses in Connecticut. And no wonder. He didn't plan to do anything for them either, and he hasn't. Connecticut is ranked one of the least friendly places to do business in the nation. Endless red tape, expensive mandates, and a sour anti-business attitude are driving employers and jobs out of the state faster than ever. Meanwhile, the governor is paying huge ransoms with taxpayer dollars to companies to get them to stay here or to come here, aka corporate welfare. This is stepping on the accelerator and the brakes at the same time, and it makes absolutely no sense. Governor Malloy's record is frankly shameful. Connecticut has the worst economic growth of any state in the country. In the past year, the economy actually shrank. Connecticut residents have lost 27,500 jobs since Dan Malloy was elected, a number that differs significantly from the one that his administration is pushing, but a number that comes from the administration's own Department of Labor website. we have also lost hundreds, if not thousands, of employers who have moved jobs out of state or closed their businesses. Dan Malloy is trying to dress up this pig with Malloy math and fibbery. Don't believe it. Malloy math is when 2 plus 2 equals whatever number the governor wants. But this pig is so ugly, it can't be made pretty. The story is simply too grim, and Connecticut citizens know how to add and subtract for themselves. Dan Malloy's progressive agenda was never going to succeed. Everyone but our governor abandoned the progressive policy framework years ago because experience showed that it doesn't work. No one I have talked to understands why the governor is trying to out Vermont, when other liberal governors all over this country, including our neighbors, Andrew Cuomo and Deval Patrick, quietly moved to more centrist policy. Not surprisingly, their states have done much better than we have. The direction Governor Malloy has taken us has been a big gamble with our state's prospects. It has failed miserably, damaged our state's future, and has hit middle-income families and young people especially hard. One-party rule isn't working either. Governor Malloy and his Democrat-controlled legislature do not represent ordinary citizens. Special interests and insiders control the agenda, while hardworking families pay enormous bills for paybacks to public sector unions, for corporate welfare, and for favors to the governor's friends. A disturbing culture of insider relationships exists at the Capitol, which is, unfortunately and very surprising to me, openly tolerated. A person's got to earn a living is the mantra. That's the way politics works is another. Governor Malloy not only hasn't challenged this culture, but he has embraced it and may have taken it to a new level with things such as policy based mostly on political paybacks rather than what's good for the citizens of Connecticut. Letting private companies and the Yukon Foundation pay for the governor's trips. Giving state business to friends while those friends do favors for the governor. Letting members of his administration leave government to rake in large fees from companies they have helped get state business. And letting family members accept jobs they are offered solely because he is governor. We have seen this movie too many times in Connecticut. Governor Malloy professed transparency during the 2010 campaign, but all we have got is more cozy capitalism, backroom deals, and sleaze. Connecticut voters deserve better. They deserve leadership they can trust. They deserve leadership that will take on the special interests and clean up the mess at the Capitol. They deserve leaders that listen to them and that they can be proud of. That's why Connecticut needs a new direction and a new governor to take us there. So I'm announcing today that I am opening an exploratory committee for the race for governor in 2014. I want to tell you a story. Most of you probably don't know this about me, but I left school when I was 17 years old. At the time, I wasn't sure if I would ever go back. I spent a year working odd jobs around the country, traveling half the time on an old motorcycle I bought for $350, and the rest of the time hitchhiking. My parents reluctantly agreed to this adventure, but did so after making it clear that I had to support myself. I left home late in the summer of 1969 with about $50 in my pocket, and returned in July of the following year with a little more than $100. So it wasn't exactly a successful financial venture, but it was successful in many other ways. I gained a new outlook on the importance of school, and I returned to school with a special enthusiasm that translated into much harder work and better performance. During that year, I spent time with so many different people from all over the country, fellow workers on jobs, truckers, and others who gave me rides, often deviating a long way from their destinations to help me out, people who gave me places to stay, leads on jobs, a meal, or just their friendship. I was in Denver, Los Angeles, Anchorage, and many places in between. It was a liberating and yet sobering experience. I learned what a vibrant, positive, and generous country we live in. I found a common and essential goodness in people all over America. Americans have an inclination to help others along by sharing what they have. Our culture celebrates rather than begrudges others' success. We share a fundamental optimism and faith in the future. Something I realize now is not true in most places. I also learned how difficult things are for many Americans, how important a good start and a little luck can be. I learned that year how much most people depend on others for their well-being, whether it is an employer, their government, or a parent or a friend. So I guess it bugs me more than most when I see people being let down by those they depend on, particularly their government. And that is another reason I'm considering running again for governor in 2014. The citizens of Connecticut are getting shafted. Governor Malloy and the special interests at the Capitol are overtaxing ordinary citizens and continuing the spending spree that benefits the few and threatens our future. Meanwhile, in towns like Bridgeport and Hartford, there are too few jobs with no relief in sight. Around the state, our roads and bridges crumble. Traffic congestion inconveniences everyone, and government services are in decline. Our once financially strong state is now arguably bankrupt. This is not fair to ordinary citizens, and it must stop. I have an idea of what Connecticut can and should be that is very different from what the governor and his progressive pals have. I believe citizens have the right to good government. They are not getting that now. I believe government service is a privilege, and an obligation, not an opportunity for advancement or a time to direct business or favors to one's family and friends, as we are seeing today. I want a Connecticut where everyone benefits from a growing economy. Everyone gets a fair deal. Businesses want to stay and invest. Everyone who wants a job can find one. And every child is in a great school. We will not get there with Governor Malloy. We need to head in a new direction with new leadership. Even so, there's a lot of work to do. We need a fresh start for our cities so they are safe, bustling places where people young and old want to be. We need a government that lives within its means. We need a government with a different attitude about its role and responsibilities, as well as the ethical standards it imposes on itself. We need a policy framework that will work and deliver the future Connecticut citizens deserve. I have the experience, the record, the resolve, and the temperament to lead our state there. I plan to spend the next few months having conversations with people around the state and seeking their advice on running for governor. I will enter the race officially when I know that my message of a new direction and a better deal for Connecticut citizens is what voters want in their governor starting in 2015. I'm looking forward to those conversations